The mechanic, James, drives around to see a number of potential new clients. He visits a site of a big industry manufacturer and he makes up the inventory of the machines that need to be serviced. He writes up a list and gives it to the bid calculation team. Now, this list is the way he's written it down, right? So he's checked the manufacturers and written them down in his own style and then written the machine numbers also in like the way that he and his team operate to write that down. This goes to the team who, with their experience, make an estimate on how much work is going to be done on these machines, like what are the risks for our organization, and then they come up with a potential bid. They're missing a lot of opportunities there.
This is basically how many times it's like this, right? It's kind
That's
of
exactly how it is.
scenario situation that probably listeners will recognize, and it's more or less like this situation. So in this episode, we would like to discuss how it can be different.
Yeah, we're going to share what opportunities are going to be there and also discuss a number of other concrete cases. Before we delve into that, welcome to the second part of this series on data management. Last week, we discussed the reason why data management is important, what enterprise level standardization means, and what data quality means. Today, we're talking about a number of concrete use cases to really put that into perspective. And next week, we're going to be sharing a number of insights that we had from a broad range of interviews that we did with our clients and also other top players in the sector. Plus, we're also going to share what steps you can take to improve your data quality and also move towards these, well, let's say insights that directly tie to the specific targets and goals that you have for 2026.
That's right. So let's dive in then and see what very specific solution or let's say next step after you have your data done you can do. And can you give us a little bit more insights in that, Stephanie?
Yes, thanks, Aaron. Oh, we didn't do our own introductions, but for who is listening for the first time, I'm here with Aaron de Weert, and my name is Stephanie Wiegers, and we're both part of Bearstop, and we know everything there is to know about data quality and standardization around it. And we're recording this series because we find it important that we can help others with that too. Okay, let's get into it. Aaron, you were saying...
Yeah, so I know you have a lot of experience in this field, so you are the expert. And like we discussed last time, to prepare the data, now we have the data. So what are then an updated scenario for the opening you just gave from our mechanic, James? What could they do in another way, and why is that a better situation?
So in the specific example of Mechanic James, we are talking about asset data. And during the course of this podcast, we will touch on a number of different types of data, because we know that to reach the overall goals, to like usually it's to improve margins or to cut costs, like tied to, of course, other organization targets. There are many teams that need to collaborate, and we're going to dive into a couple of them, also including procurement. We'll be talking about asset management now. And so James has just visited this site. He's recorded all of the service assets. We know that this is not always the case. Sometimes a client will send it over, right? But still then one of their mechanics will have made this inventarization. And everyone has a different way of recording what is actually happening here. And what does that like mean in practice? It's, well, let's say we have an MRI scanner like created by Philips. Maybe the spelling of Philips is different. Maybe it's not Philips written down as manufacturer, but it's a specific subdivision. And then some people will just write like MRI scanner. Some people will just write only the type, which means that you can have maybe 50 different ways of logging this one asset or product or machine that you want to have services done on. Now, then when you have this whole list, so that's not just one or two, but that's of course a long list, and you need to make an estimate on that, then someone with lots of experience will be able to have a look at it and say, okay, you know, on average, this is the amount of time that this type of machine is going to be in service based on how old it is, like what we know about these clients. And so it is possible to make like quite a good estimate. First, well, I would call it just a good version. But this, first of all, takes a lot of time, which is okay because this is something you want to take care of. What I always find worrying is a lot of information is actually missed there because organizations actually have all of these pieces of knowledge that are documented. For example, how often have we serviced this specific machine in the past? But then we have that data, so all of those logging points for every different way that it's stored in your system or in your database. And what's causing like a problem or an inefficiency at least is that means that you don't have this opportunity to directly connect the dots. And that has impact on a broad range of things, not just on creating this bid, but it is present throughout the entire value chain. And so the first step in starting up a client relation is the bid, and it means how fast can we turn around? How well do we protect our own margins? How well are we data driven in protecting ourselves against the risk that something will need much more service than we have estimated that it will. And so once we then nail the contract, we go into the next phase where we have offered for a fixed price, and maybe contracts are structured in many ways, but we do have a certain risk that we now carry as an organization in that we need to execute and make sure this is serviced. And we don't want to have any downtime because we all know how expensive downtime is. So we want to have a smart way to serve our client in the best way possible to make sure that we do maintenance before things break down. And we want to be able to advise them as well. Because
And do you think that because the data, so that's including a lot of, let's say, information, what is maybe otherwise hidden, even though there can be a lot of experience. So what's your view on then? You have very experienced people that do this for many years and they know how it works and so on and so forth. So, but now we have the opportunity to also fuel them with additional insights they did not have before, or it's very difficult to see different connections. So what's your view on improving their workability by doing that?
Yeah, so you're touching on a very interesting point there, which is that many people with all this experience, they fear that a system is going to take over their work. I recently had a conversation with someone about this who is a bid manager. Let's call him Mark. So I asked Mark, I was like, hey, would you want to use something that gives you these insights and like have them straight away? And I immediately got this pushback because he was like, no, you need experience for it. And like, this is something that we as a bid team are best tested to do. I'm like, yes, thank you. Of course you are. And I really can see how there is a mismatch in technology tools that are being made available and opportunities that there are, and just the communication about it. Because the idea is never to get these people's experience, to not use the experience of these people anymore. What actually is really interesting about this opportunity is that when you manage to get your like data baseline correct, so you have this standardization across your organization and you create this foundation of what is happening in terms of your data and what's happening around your machines, then the people that before had to do a lot of repetitions, they now have access to all of this extra information. And so that means that they have a tool that they can use to have like an initial overview, and they will have their experience to say, this is what I would think it is. And then you can compare and you can make this really, really elaborate risk assessment that makes you able to offer at like the best profitability, while being as competitive as you can be with a lower risk. And then it also drives, so that's the next step for a next team to give really good advice to the clients because they really know what's happening, and they have, because you have many, many clients with all these different products and assets, and you're doing this service not just for them but for many different people. So you can suddenly combine all of those insights, and then you just combine it with the knowledge you have, and now you can give really good advice. And that,
So basically, it's interesting because you're adding an additional layer, and this additional layer, it's also deepening and making even more professional or bring this work from the bid manager to another level, right? And not only this for the project itself, for the people that work on it in the bid team, but I also see this benefit that you just pointed out for the company. So it's a broader perspective because you have this layer. Then on a company level, you can do more with this, especially when it's a bigger company with more projects, with more bid teams, etc., and so on. That information can be leveraged. So all in the end, it's actually
Yeah.
only supporting people and make the work maybe more interesting even.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. It makes the thinking part, it brings all the thinking back to the people, lets them leverage their experience, and takes a bit of repetition out of their workday so they can be more focused. I want to touch upon one thing that you actually mentioned there, and that is how this is interesting for the broader organization. And we won't have time to go too much into detail of that today, so we'll move that one to next week, which is around by getting this data quality right, we're not only serving assets, right? We're not only making improvements there. The data quality is a foundational layer. And there's a couple of reasons why, well, organizations should care, but not only that, 2026 really is marking a trend where people stop going from the craze about AI to realizing when we want to use AI tools, we need to have a base layer that is reliable and can be trusted. So we're really seeing a shift within the industry where the hot topic is becoming how are we AI ready? Part of that is that we see more and more Fabric migrations. So Fabric is Microsoft's data lake, which brings all of the pieces of information that are scattered throughout the organization, different teams, different softwares, different Excel sheets, different models. They bring it all together into Microsoft Fabric. And then that allows you to draw these company-wide insights or these
Yeah.
cross-cutting insights.
I think we
Then
see
they,
a huge increase in interest, right, in Fabric, but not only Fabric, but this kind of solutions, because more and more people now realize, of course, advertise is all the outside of AI, you know, what you finally can do with it. However,
yeah,
then many companies, the reason why many of these projects currently are not so successful or fail, because they run in the issue of, but then we need this data layer. So how do we get the
yeah,
data layer right? And that's
yeah,
actually what we just pointed out today. From that's the important thing to do. And if you have that, then so many doors open for you for what you can do next.
yeah. Yeah, and well, the AI revolution, or if I can call it that, a bit of a buzzword, the AI hype has really caused people to think about, wait a second, what are we feeding into this product? And now we get to this foundation, which just isn't the sexy bit. Like no one is like, ooh, I love data quality. Let's get that right first. People want to work on their targets, right? We're like, let's serve our client better, let's improve our margins, let's cut cost, and also let's make sure that our people can do the work that they signed up to do and not be some admin machine. So that's gonna bring me to the conclusion, because next week we are going to dive a bit more into what does it mean to get your data foundation right, and what are some first steps to take when you're considering either a Fabric migration or when you just want to think about how AI ready are we, and how AI ready is my company, and can I meet my own targets with that foundation? And what we're also going to talk about is, and we've touched upon it a couple of times, we had a lot of really, really cool interviews in the last couple of weeks where we spoke to CEOs of a number of the big construction and facilities management companies. We also spoke to asset managers, bid managers, and procurement specialists. So we're really excited to give you a number of first insights out of that research. You're going to be the first to hear before we publish the report on it. And then
And
we're
I
also
think
just going to
we
share a
will
number of
reveal
concrete
a couple of.
steps.
Oh, sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt you. I think we will
No, no,
reveal.
go.
You're so enthusiastic. We will reveal a couple of things, what also may surprise you. How people respond, but also came back to us and how they requested the things that we would do for them first.
Yeah. It'll be exciting. I can't wait. We have to stop talking now because I'm gonna share more than I can. It was amazing to have you here this week, and we're really looking forward to having you again next week, where we're gonna go into what to do next.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to it and to continue the story with some live cases and more insights from the market side itself. So see you then. And for now, thank you so much for following us.
Thank you so much. See you then.
Bye.